Okay. I think, we have 24 people, so we're waiting on a couple more. We'll give another minute. On my count, we're still missing 7 libraries. Unless somebody just came on that I missed. 6. 5. Come on, it's a countdown now.
I know we have a couple alternates here. Hello, alternates. I haven't heard from anyone who wasn't planning to send any rep, but things happen.
Okay, well, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 10:02. And we can start with roll call, and perhaps the others will join as we are calling roll. So if we have any absences, maybe we can come around and check them again before we move along.
Okay, I'll state library name. If you could just state your first and last name, please. Algonquin,
Sarah Murray,
Carrie,
Diane McNulty.
Crystal Lake,
Catherine Martins.
Des Plaines,
Joe Bonell,
Ela, Evanston.
Sorry, Lauren Rosenthal is here. Forget
Sorry.
Amila.
I see you. Sorry, Lauren. Thank you. Evanston,
Good morning, Sharon Dancek Lyons.
Fox River Valley. Back to that one. Fremont,
Scott Davis.
Glencoe,
Andy Kim.
Glenview, Graves Lake,
Sean Draegert,
Highland Park,
Heidi Smith.
Huntley,
Frank Novak,
Indian Trails,
Brian Shepherd.
Lake Forest,
Catherine Lemmer.
Lake Villa,
Mick Jacobson,
Lincolnwood,
Josephine Tucci,
McHenry,
Leslie Jakacki.
Morton Grove,
Pam Leffler,
Niles, Maine,
Cindy Rademacher,
Northbrook,
Kate Hall.
Palatine,
Jeannie Dilcher.
Park Ridge, Prospect Heights,
Alex Big Slick Todd.
Round Lake,
Jim DiDonato.
Wilmette,
Anthony Austin.
Winnetka, and Zion.
Molly Brumbaugh.
So go back, we'll try again for Fox River Valley, Glenview, and Park Ridge, and Winnetka.
did we get Park Ridge? I know Heidi is here.
Heidi isn't at Park Ridge anymore.
Okay.
Heidi is not at Park Ridge anymore. She
But
is
in
not.
the chat, I see
There's
Anastasia. Okay,
Yes, you got that. Okay.
In chat, it does say Anastasia is here from Park Ridge.
Yep.
But her mic isn't working.
Any other chats besides that? No, okay. And from CCS, we have Rebecca Malinowski, Deborah Wishmeyer, Mieko Fujiwara-Landers, and Beth Strunkbrenner. Anyone else that I'm missing?
Any additions to the agenda for anyone? Okay, none. We do have space for public comment. Do we have any public comment? Okay, I know Kate wanted to share something, an announcement, so I'll let her do that here at public comment. Kate, if you want to.
Thanks. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I know a lot of you were at Monday's meeting and I know I sent an email out, but I wanted to just make sure everyone was aware that Chad Raymond, who's the former director at the Northbrook Library, passed away Monday evening. He was the director for 30 years and was really big in the Illinois library landscape and will be very missed. So I don't have any information yet, but I know that a lot of people worked with him and I wanted to make sure that everyone had heard this sad news. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that, Kate. And I'm sure we are all sending our condolences to his family and the library community and people who knew him and worked with him. And I know a few of you shared your stories of the impact that he's had on you. So we will keep a good thought for his family and the library community. And that's it. We'll move along then to consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions or want to pull anything out of the consent agenda? If not, then we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Brian,
Kate Hall, oh, sorry, Kate Hall, I'll second.
okay. So Brian made the motion, Kate seconded, and can we get a roll call vote, please, Beth?
Banquin,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Crystal Lake,
Yes.
Displains,
Yes.
Ela,
Yes.
Evanston,
Aye.
Fox River Valley, Fremont,
Yes.
Glencoe,
Yes.
Glenview, Grays Lake,
Yes.
Highland Park,
Yes.
Huntley,
Yes.
Indian Trails,
Yes.
Lake Forest,
Yes, I.
Lake Villa,
Yes.
Lincolnwood,
Yes.
McHenry,
Yes.
Morton Grove,
Yes.
Niles,
Yes.
Northbrook,
Yes.
Palatine,
Yep.
Park Ridge,
Yes.
Prospect Heights,
Aye.
Round Lake,
Yes.
Wilmette,
Yes.
Winnetka, Zion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Consent agenda is passed. So moving along to business, the first thing that we have on the agenda is strategic plan recommendation from long range planning. So I will pass this to Pam Leffler or Rebecca.
Rebecca, do you want to start? I mean, I think that the long-range plan kind of speaks for itself as well as the notes. And the minutes that are in the packet also reflect pretty accurately what we discussed. Does anyone have any questions for me, or Rebecca, how did you want us to proceed with this?
Yeah, I think we're happy to take questions. There were some specific notes to consider, which I thought might be areas for discussion or might hopefully answer some questions you had ahead of time. But I think you're right, Pam. Questions is where to go. Kate?
Hey, I'm trying to be good and not just like talk all the time. So I had a couple questions on the mission and vision. So in both of these, it specifically says library technology and doesn't in any way, shape, or form reference an ILS, which, to be fair, it didn't really in the old one, but it seemed a little clearer with the old ones that it was primarily focused around an integrated library system. And I'm a little concerned with, after our talks last year, where we said like, no, the focus isn't on all library technologies. We're not expanding CCS's scope of service, that it really is on the ILS and any technologies that connect to that. That didn't seem clear to me. So unfortunately, I don't have like a recommendation for how to just make a small adjustment to better reflect that, but it was something that I thought that I did want to bring up.
Sorry, I'm pressing the wrong buttons. So those of you on the Long Range Planning Committee, correct me if I'm misremembering. I'm on some medication right now, so I'm a little loopy. But if I remember correctly, we actually kind of moved away from specifying that it was ILS specific in order to give us a little bit more wiggle room, if you will. But I mean, if the group feels that we want to bring it, pull it back, then I think obviously that's something that we can discuss and, agree upon.
I also, I talked to Kate a little bit about this earlier in the week. I feel a little bit like ILS or Library Services Platform or some other like Polaris specific language can be a little alienating or jargony for some of our like frontline library staff. So I certainly understand the concern, and I do think we want to stay, connected to the ILS, but as language is changing even in the industry, like is it an ILS or an LMS or an LSP, not having that specific phrase in there is something I'm okay with, but I understand if there's a push to like rein it in a little.
Yeah, and I'm thinking something like, and I agree with that, right? I also though think that it, like, to me at least, based on the conversations that we've had over the last couple of years, the focus is on technology that helps staff perform their jobs and helps patrons access our resources. So maybe something about, like connecting people with, resources or something like that, because it's underlying kind of the core. One of the examples I gave to Rebecca is, we don't want to be like, okay, CCS, you now have to have an easy proxy server that all of us connect to for all of our online databases. Like that seems like that would be outside the scope, is kind of what I was thinking. That it should connect to how we provide the information of what we have in terms of resources for patrons to check out, whether physical or digital, right?
Hi, it's Karen. I'm going to jump in here as well. Because we were trying to be future focused and inclusive, we wanted this to be broad enough that if something changed dramatically in our industry, that we still felt that it was within the mission and the vision of what we're trying to do. And so we were not trying to make it so broad, Kate, that no one realized we were talking about the integrated library system, but we were also trying to be future focused enough to know that things change and technology changes, and we may want to take advantage of these improved technologies, and thought that this was the bucket that would allow us that flexibility to do it.
This is Diane. I also thought that we kept it open, yet we still said what we were doing, promoting resource sharing, improving the patron experience and all that. So we were trying not to have three paragraphs long, and to keep it flexible, let's say.
I guess I should ask too, does anyone else share Kate's concern about that? I mean, is this something that everyone feels that we need to go back and tweak a little bit more?
Because if it's just me, then, right, that, then it doesn't really
Not that you don't
matter.
count a lot,
No,
Kate.
no, no, I'm
If anyone else,
simply,
you know,
but
like I said,
I'm only one. I'm only one, Pam.
I've been interested to hear the discussion, and I think having heard it, I do not share the concern, but when Kate brought it up, it was interesting to think about.
I agree with Jeannie that I the same thought had crossed my mind about, well, I mean, ILS, but I really like the explanation and the mission is, you know, resource sharing, improved patron experience. I mean, those are all the functions of the ILS. So I agree. I'm glad we had the discussion about it. I'm glad you brought it up, Kate. I'm also very satisfied with the explanation.
anyone else want to comment on that?
I'm going to add one more thing. We looked at a couple of other strategic plans, and we liked the guiding principles, and we felt that that kind of was a more of an explanation, would you say, Pam, in that it narrowed it down to the things that we felt CCS should be looking at, doing, and all.
So can I actually ask a question? I was also going to ask a question about the guiding principles, because so one of the things, so I maybe feel stronger than most people, but like CCS is not a library system. And I just want to make sure that our scope remains focused on the goal of what CCS is. So there was one thing in the guiding principles that I was, you know, concerned about, which was provide professional development, training, and networking opportunities. I'd love to add something like around, you know, the systems that CCS supports, so that again, CCS isn't, you know, Rails. Their focus is on helping us best use the technologies that CCS manages for us.
We had a lot of discussion about professional development and training and what that entailed, and had some of those same concerns / questions that you're raising, Kate, about, you know, what does that look like? And I think that we ended up keeping it again a little bit broader, with the idea that we weren't really, you know, we don't know what the future is going to entail. And so, but those are some concerns that were raised during the discussion of this. I don't necessarily have a problem with adding something else to that, but again, you know, what does everyone else think about that?
I think, I know that when we were starting this planning and the consultants came in and we were talking about how often we needed to have in-person meetings or governor's board meetings and the structure of all of that, there was a significant number of us, and myself was included, that highly valued the networking opportunities and professional development opportunities that CCS adopts. So I'm okay with leaving it as is. I think I trust CCS to not have, you know, third Thursday tea and crumpet day at their offices just because. I trust them to keep these meetings and whatnot focused on our core mission and whatnot. And I also trust us to attend those that matter most to us. And so if Rebecca wants to have a tea and crumpet day at Thursdays at their offices, you know, there's not going to be many who show up. And so they're not going to have them all that often. And then they're not going to have them at all. So I'm with the group in keeping it broad on that.
I actually raised concerns about that point, specifically around professional development, because I feel like the line between professional development and training is sort of blurry, and like, what are we committing to doing? But after talking with my staff and talking with the committee and reading the guiding principles in conjunction with the mission and vision, I feel comfortable with it as is because our mission and our vision are focused on library technology as it relates to resource sharing and the patron experience. So, you know, the other things that we do all tie into that. We talked a little bit about, like, I sort of defined professional development for the committee. I'm like, here's what I think this is. If you think this is something else, like, I need to know, and gave some examples. Our professional development would be some outside of like our core like training curriculum. It would be like when we offer SQL training or how to use MarcEdit in conjunction with the ILS. So things that are still connected to like doing data cleanup and maintaining database integrity, but not like how to do a reference interview or like, you know, things that are certainly library related, but not related to the technology that we provide. So I was a little hesitant on this particular line, but at the end of our discussions, I was comfortable with it. And I feel like with the mission and vision, it's very clear what we are saying that we'll provide, and that if someone starts asking me to do something else, I can point back and say, well, that's not really in our scope.
So maybe if people would be okay with this, we can just change the sentence under guiding principles to say the guiding principles underlie all of the work CCS does, and along with the mission and vision are the driving forces in CCS decision making. Because I think there isn't anything currently connecting all three of those. Like clearly, like what I'm hearing everyone say is like, yeah, no, we all understand, but we're all in this room right now, but we don't know 2 years from now who's going to be in this room, right? So I think we just need really clear language, because there has been a lot of like, well, I think it should be more this, and we've done so much work, but I don't want that work over the last couple of years. I don't want that work to then kind of take us on another sideways turn, so that we can remain really focused and clear on kind of what lenses are we looking at when we're making these decisions.
So you're suggesting saying that under guiding principles, in conjunction with the mission and vision statements, the guiding principles underline all of the work, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, yeah.
I'm okay with that. I mean, does anyone else have any comments about that? I mean, I look at the document, I'm fine with including that, but, and I understand what you're saying, Kate. I was thinking about the document kind of as a whole, not only the mission and vision and guiding principles, but then also the strategic directions help define all of these things a little bit better. But I have no problem adding that. Does anyone else feel strongly that they don't want to add the in conjunction with the mission and vision statements, the guiding principles, blah, blah, blah?
And I think this will help with the user groups, right? Because then when CCS is like, someone says, I want a tea and crumpets every Thursday in Rebecca's office, they can be like, well, actually, when we look at this is how we funnel it, and it's clearer. I don't know. I'm probably making a bigger deal of this than it needs to, but it would be awesome if we could add that.
Catherine?
I think that what happens when you start to do that kind of stuff is, from a drafting perspective, it's a little bit of what Pam just said about now you're excluding one very important part, the strategic direction. So the minute you start to parse and say, these three things work together, then the question becomes, but what are the, where are, I mean, it's a drafting issue, and how you interpret drafting when it's put down to a question. And I feel from a wordsmithing drafting perspective, to add that language will probably open more doors that we don't want to open than it would, because it opens all the questions about what are the relationships of all of these parts. Whereas I think everyone read this document, all 24 people, and how many people we shared it with in our staffs, to say, this is a unified document. And you would never read one part as a standalone, unless the document specifically said, the mission stands alone, the other parts are not used to interpret the mission. So from a document drafting perspective, I would encourage the addition of that language.
I understand what you're saying, Catherine, but I think going back to what Karen was saying, that they were trying to be future focused. So this strategic plan is for 3 years. We're going to evaluate it annually. But to me, like the mission, vision, and guiding principles, those shouldn't be changing every 3 years. This should now be locked in place for a significant length of time. Hopefully, I know we just, revised the mission and vision just a couple of years ago, but my hope would be that these would then stay that way. And for future strategic plans, we would be using these things to help guide us, that these are things that wouldn't really change where the strategic priorities would. And so then having that clearer language in that initial piece, while yes, the strategic priorities do definitely intersect with that this would help us for future, like next year when we look at this, and 2.5 years from now, when we're doing a new strategic plan, they'll be using these, and having more clarity around that will help for future proofing things and giving us better direction on the strategic directions, not of this plan, but of the future plans. Is how I'm looking at it.
So this is Kim in Crystal Lake, and while one might hope that, I've done many, many, many years of strategic planning, and the mission and vision and this type of thing continues to evolve with every strategic plan. I've done many for CCS. You get different people to the table and they're going to have different opinions. So, as much as we might like to think the work that we did in 2020, 2021 is going to hold for the next 5 years, I don't think we can assume that. If there's a concern, maybe at the beginning of this document, there could just be a simple statement that we consider this document functions in, as a whole, or something along those lines. But yeah, I think to go into different like guiding principles and say that relates to this other part does open the door. But, I think mission, vision, and guiding principles, they're always going to be discussed. And there's always a chance they're going to change with each revision.
So maybe what is needed is kind of an introductory, this was the landscape with which we created this, and this is how we view it. Piece. Like we have that in our strategic plan, and it's very helpful because we created in 2018. So, understanding where we were.
It gives you some context.
Yeah, and I think that's ultimately what I just want to make sure that there's context for when we're looking at this again in the future.
Okay. I'm not opposed to that. I'm wondering if that's something that I know this pushes us out a little bit, but I know the Long Range Planning Committee is meeting in March. I don't think we've set a date yet, but I don't want to waste this group's time in trying to craft that, introductory message. If that's something that everyone feels important, is that it would be important for us to have here. And that maybe that's something the Long Range Planning Committee can work on and send to the group via email, and to at least get comments.
Maybe we could just do a thumbs up, thumbs down about how many people are really in agreement that is needed.
That it's needed.
And I don't see any reason why we couldn't approve the strategic plan today, with the addition that the long range plan will add a introductory statement that gives some background on what the landscape was when this was drafted. And I don't feel like we need to approve that because it's essentially just kind of reflecting the world that we were in when you created the plan, is what I'm thinking.
Okay, so I'm hearing a couple different things. Someone's suggesting that we take kind of a straw poll on who thinks we need to have some introductory language, or that puts the plan in context, and that we can go ahead and approve the plan as it's been presented right now, and that we don't have to have that introductory content or the introductory remarks to approve the plan right now. So I guess, can everyone just show me like the thumbs up on the?
Can we,
or Sarah?
I don't know if we want to go with the thumbs up, thumbs down and figure out more work, or if we just want to present the document as it is to the board and have a motion made and determine from that vote whether or not we feel we need to do the additional work.
Okay.
So
So then a no vote would mean that you feel that you need to do additional work. Is that what you're suggesting, Sarah?
That's what I think that would work. If people are comfortable with the plan as it is presented, then we can accept the plan as it's presented. And if people feel that there is additional work needed, then we can, then vote no. And if no wins, then we'll discuss what that work might be. But otherwise, I think on the whole, what we're looking at is acceptable by everyone. I think it's just a little bit of nuance and detail of what kind of introduction might be needed. So I don't know how important that is to everyone. So if we can vote, then we'll know.
It's fine. Okay.
So do you want a
I
motion
do have
to
one other
approve?
question before on another topic, if I could, and it's about the length of the thing. It says that you guys took a lot of time in considering and making it 3 years, and I'd like to hear more about how you came up with that, because to me that does not seem like it's long enough, because it's going to take us time to create all the new committees, get everybody comfortable with what the committees are doing with each of the parts of the strategic plan, get a process in place to do something, and then maybe we have a year working on it, and then it takes a year, 18 months to work on and create a new strategic plan. And I understand that we're writing this plan in unique circumstances, but I think the fact that we're committing to reviewing it every year, I would like to hear why it's not a 5-year plan, to give us time to really sink our teeth into what we want to get accomplished with it before we start looking into creating a new strategic plan. And like the things we've talked about in the past, just now, are we going to change the principles? Are we going to change the mission or whatever? And even if we don't, that's going to be the discussion. And it's not going to be working on or wrapping up whatever we're supposed to be doing with this plan. 3 years, especially with a group that meets as quarterly like us, does not seem like it's sufficient to get everything done.
I'm happy to speak to that, Pam, if that's okay. So we, at our first long-range planning meeting this past year, I think we had originally planned on a 5-year plan. And then we had our first meeting, and there was a lot of concern that what we need right now and in the next 12 months or 18 months is going to be really different than what we need in 2 years or 3 years, and certainly in 5 years. So we talked about doing 2 separate plans, or we talked about not doing a plan and just saying our job is to support libraries however we can during COVID. And I think 3 years ended up feeling like a good compromise between staying flexible and responsive, but also not saying we're just going to do a 1-year plan and CCS staff are going to have these goals, and then we're going to revisit it next year, and then we're going to have new goals for CCS staff. The directions that we have in here, and I talked about this a little bit in our notes. If you compare this plan to our last plan had both a lot of very lofty, aspirational, big directions and initiatives, as well as a lot of very concrete and specific objectives within the plan. This plan is taking a sort of broader approach. What's the kind of organization we want to be? What do we want to focus on? And then there's really more sort of ideas in it, rather than saying we need to build membership by 5%, or we need to add 3 more members. It's saying, all right, figure out how we're going to monitor interest from members to make sure that we're not caught unawares when people want to join, when libraries want to join CCS. It's, I think this plan really is about improving the services that we already have, whereas our last plan was a fair amount of reinventing CCS. So to me, the 3-year plan reflects that it's a less, I don't want to say rigorous, because I think there's certainly a lot of good meat in here for us to work on as an organization and for our team to work on internally. But it to me is just a little bit more flexible. I don't know that we'll need a lot of new committees. I think the groups that we have in place are going to be able to help us with this work, and a lot of it is going to be internal to CCS staff. So I hear what you're saying, that like you don't want us to like just get into it and then have to change direction, but it's not a concern I share based on what the directions are.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments or concerns, or will somebody make a motion?
So this is Kim. If I could just address some of what Alex was asking too, is we were recognizing or acknowledging the, to use a term we all hate, the uncertain times that we're all living with right now. And we did not think that we could predict exactly how soon things would clear up so that we could have more concrete, assertive plans to move forward in certain directions. So that's why we went more general. But with that said, I would make a motion that we approve the strategic plan as presented by the committee.
This is Karen. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Kim for the motion and Karen for the second. And can we get a roll call vote, please, Beth?
Yes. I'll start with Crystal Lake,
Yes.
Des Plaines,
Yes.
Ela,
Yes.
Evanston,
Absolutely.
Fox River Valley.
Yes.
Thank you, Roxanne. Welcome. Fremont,
Yes.
Glencoe,
Yes.
Glenview, Grays Lake,
Yes.
Highland Park,
Yes.
Huntley,
Yes.
Indian Trails,
Yes.
Lake Forest,
Yes.
Lake Villa,
Yes.
Lincolnwood,
Yes.
McHenry,
Yes.
Morton Grove,
Yes.
Niles, Maine,
Yes.
Northbrook,
No.
Palatine,
Yes.
Park Ridge,
Yes.
Prospect Heights,
Aye.
Round Lake,
Yes.
Wilmette,
Yes.
thank you.
Sorry.
Conecuh, Zion,
Yes.
Algonquin,
Yes.
and Cary.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we will move forward with the strategic plan as presented by the Long Range Planning Committee. I thank that committee for all of the hard work that you put into preparing that document, bringing it to us today, and then entertaining the conversation. So thank you all for that work. Next on our agenda is Innovative Renewal and Partner Development Program, and I'm going to let Rebecca speak to this.
Yes, so actually, Sarah, I think you might have an older copy of the agenda, so it's just the partner development program, although I can speak to the other component if you'd like as well.
Go ahead with what we have on the agenda.
Okay, so the Innovative Partner Development Program, as you can see in the packet, is focused on their new product, their new next-gen product, which is called Vega. CCS was invited to be a member of the sort of next cohort, which is going to be focusing on consortium and Polaris development for a discovery layer. There are also products in the works related to analytics and patron engagement. The meetings that Deborah is attending on behalf of CCS kind of cover all of those products. So we're getting kind of a sneak peek and offering feedback on all three of those. Executive committee authorized me to sign the development partner agreement in November. And so the development partner agreement was a pretty simple agreement. Our attorney reviewed it, and it basically was like, we're going to join this program. When we're happy with the product and it meets our needs, we'll replace PowerPack with Vega. However, we can cancel at any time before then, and we incur no costs up until the time we go live with the product. So executive committee felt confident, our attorney felt confident, and I felt confident that we could get involved with this program, offer our expertise, and then if it turns out like we like PowerPack more than we like Vega, we're not under any obligation to use this new product. After the November executive committee meeting, Innovative then said, oh, but also could you sign this SaaS agreement? And SaaS is the software as a service agreement. It's sort of our general subscription agreement that we have. So we have like a master subscription agreement that we also refer to as a SaaS agreement. And I was not authorized to sign that agreement. It didn't exist when I talked to executive committee. So I, of course, declined to sign it. As it is now, I'm not comfortable signing the document for the reasons that I've listed in the packet. It's not something I'd recommend to you. Innovative is saying that they need that document signed for their internal accounting, and that it's fine. If we just never go live with Vega, that document will never go into effect. But I would certainly like language in the document that says, if we don't go live with Vega, none of this goes into effect, specifically because that document, like our Innovative contract, has more specific rules for if and when we could cancel the agreement. So I want to make sure that CCS is protected in terms of cancellation, like, you know, that we're not going to be on the hook for 3 years of a product that we don't want to use, et cetera. So the attorney did provide me with a redlined version, which I think I still need to go back and talk to him some more about. But after talking with Sarah, I think it would be, I don't theoretically have a problem signing some other agreement with Innovative as long as it's fair and reasonable to CCS and meets our concerns. So if the board is comfortable, I think it would be helpful to have a motion to direct me to negotiate with Innovative, and then rather than having to wait to come back to another board meeting, if Sarah and the attorney are comfortable with the document, then we can go ahead and sign it. I'm happy to take questions about the program or the contract or any of the things at this time.
I move that we authorize Rebecca to negotiate with,
You should
Whoever
do
she-
the actual one that's in the packet, Alex.
huh?
Sample motion on page 11, if you would like
Oh.
to use it.
Well, then I move to make the motions on page 11 of the packet.
I'll second the motion to direct the executive director to negotiate fair and clear language in the SaaS agreement for Vega with Innovative Interfaces. And when the executive director, board president, and CCS attorney are satisfied with the revised language, the executive director shall sign the agreement on behalf of CCS.
Okay, we have a simple motion from Alex and a second with all the details from Kate. Thank you. And Beth, if we can get a roll call vote, please.
Sure. I'll start with Prospect Heights,
Yes.
Round Lake,
Yes.
Wilmette,
Yes.
Winnetka, Zion,
Yes.
Algonquin,
Yes.
Cary,
Yes.
Crystal Lake,
Yes.
Des Plaines,
Yes.
Gila,
Yes.
Evanston,
Yes.
Fox River Valley,
Yes.
Fremont,
Yes.
Glencoe,
Yes.
Glenview, Grays Lake,
Yes.
thank you, Highland Park,
Yes.
Huntley,
Yes.
Indian Trails,
Yes.
Lake Forest,
Yes.
Lake Villa,
Yes.
Lincolnwood,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Morton Grove,
Yes.
Niles, Maine,
Yes.
Northbrook,
Yes.
Palatine,
Yes.
Park Ridge.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. I will continue to work with Rebecca and the attorney to make sure that, did we lose Rebecca?
I'm here. I was just muted and chewing cereal.
Sorry, you jumped down from where you were on my screen. I will continue to work with Rebecca and the attorney to make sure that the agreement is fair before we sign anything. So, and certainly we will keep you all updated as to how that is proceeding. All right, moving on the correct agenda, the next item is innovative mobile app opportunity. So Rebecca, do you want to share some with us about this opportunity?
Yes. So let me start by saying that originally this was one of our potential objectives in the long range plan. And in discussing it, long range planning said, why don't we, the concern was like, do we want a system-wide app? We've got at least like half of our libraries that are using an app. Are they happy with it? Should we do this big investigation to see if we should do a system-wide app? And we had it in the strategic plan, and then at a long range planning meeting, it was decided like, why don't we just put this in front of governing board with so many libraries that already have an app? Let's not waste a bunch of CCS time like investigating if nobody wants it. So at today's meeting, I think it would be helpful to decide on one of three paths forward, which are indicated on page 13. So at this meeting, governing board could say, a lot of us have apps, we're happy, we don't want a system-wide app. If any individual libraries want to work on this, they can do that with CCS. I think the least likely scenario is option 2, that governing board says, yeah, let's get this app, let's do it right now, and authorize negotiating and signing that contract. Or option 3, that there's significant interest from governing board in pursuing a system-wide app, but we need some additional information like demos and, you know, talking about it with staff. So in that case, we'd request that any individual libraries that were interested continue to wait until April, so governing board can revisit this issue. I'll pause for a minute to ask if there's questions about like why this is on the agenda or what our options are, and then I'm happy to talk a little bit about the app as well.
How many different apps are currently being used by CCS members?
3, I think. We have Communico, which is quite popular. We've got at least one library using Capira, and I know Boopsy was acquired, but Boopsy's not dead yet, I don't think.
MyLibro.
Oh, thank you, Pam. So the app itself has not been developed by Innovative. It's a product from a company called Solus. So Innovative is partnering with Solus on the integration, install, et cetera. It has some really compelling features, one of which is that it has a curbside scheduling component in it, but I know many of you have already found a curbside scheduling solution that works for you. I think the most interesting feature is that it has like a patron contact list self-checkout option that works with either barcodes or RFID. And if you looked at that pricing and you were wondering why for individual libraries there was such a difference, it's whether you're a barcode library or RFID library, the RFID self-check component is more expensive than the barcode self-check component. So I think those options are really interesting. The functionality of the app itself is, it's fine. It's a good app. I use it with my local library, which is a Swan library, and I did include some screenshots in your packet about what it looks like as a consortium app. CCS can say, we're not interested in this consortium-wide app, and then individual libraries have the pricing that's there. We're happy to set up demos. I think the big question is, those of you that already have apps, even if, like, would you be interested in switching away from them, especially for those libraries that use Communico? This will integrate with an events management system, but it doesn't do events management or room booking. So I think especially for the Communico libraries, that would be a challenge. Catherine.
I guess I would ask that there might be a fourth option, just to muddy the waters here. Is that, is there, if the innovative app is not chosen, the fourth option would be, would CCS pursue some sort of pricing with Communico? Because that's what we're hearing back from Communico, is that if more members of a consortium were to come on, there might be some pricing availability for all the libraries using Communico, if it came as a consortium buy.
I would say I'm happy to talk to Communico. We were recently approached by LinkedIn Learning about consortium pricing. I think they contacted Deborah, and maybe Deborah, you have an update. She asked if I was interested in meeting with them, and my response was, I'm happy to meet with any vendor as long as any discount that is negotiated is applied to the members that already use the product. So especially with like Communico and LinkedIn Learning, we've got a lot of members that already use it. And then for something, I think for an app, we can talk about it. But for like a LinkedIn Learning thing, if they require 100% participation to get a discount, at this stage with that sort of product, that was not something I wanted to pursue. I think an app is a little bit different because you know, there could be functionality that is specific to everyone. So I would say the fourth option, Catherine, that I'm open to is if governing board wants a system-wide app, but we're not ready to say it should be the innovative app, that we invite, the governing board says this should be a project, and we invite other app vendors, including Communico, to basically bid for a CCS app.
Don't we already get a discount through Rails for Communico? Pretty sure.
I believe so.
This is Diane, and we had the Boopsy app, but once, who bought it? Demco? Whoever bought it, Demco or EBSCO, they did not follow up on communications, and we dropped it and we went to Capira. So if we're the only ones, that's fine. We really like it. We just went on it, and it has some options that it doesn't appear that this one has, or they're not using it, because we can, people can book our study rooms with it, and it does have curbside capabilities. So I would say that at this time, we're not interested, because it did take several months over the summer to come up on it. And I'm sure if I'd said we're changing, my staff would have a hissy.
Yeah, I imagine many folks are in a similar boat as Diane.
I was gonna say, we're at Indian Trails, we're in the same boat with Diane. We're actually coming up on Compura now, so we would not be looking to join a consortial buy.
At
I would be on one app.
Round Lake, I had our board vote on discontinuing a mobile app, use of any mobile app, because we found that the statistics were just decreasing year after year, and that people found that the mobile version of the PAC and mobile version of other events management software were doing very well for patrons. They didn't feel that the $4,000 or $5,000 for the app was a good use of money. So I don't expect our board would be very thrilled about going back and spending money on a mobile app at this time.
And we just launched the Communico app at Northbrook after getting rid of Boopsy last year. So we would not be interested in looking at a consortial app either.
And in Evanston, we're happy with Communico as well.
Park, I'm
In
not sure
Zion,
yet.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm so, I'll finish up and then we'll hear about Zion. Thank you. Heidi from Highland Park. I'm not sure what platform our app is. This is day 8 on the job, but I do know that we have an app and that it just recently went public. So I'd have to say there'd probably be some reluctance on our end as well. Thank you.
In Zion, while we would love an app, Communico is far out of our price range. We might be interested in this. We'd probably need to have a full review of it and demos and all of that. But doing some sort of consortial buy of Communico is far out of our price range.
This is Leslie from McHenry, and I'm in the same boat as Zion Benton, that having a consortial app like this would be the only way we would be able to get an app for our library at this time.
Do we have any more discussion about this? Or would somebody like to make a motion to look at one of the now 4 options that were presented, to decline pursuing a system-wide app, authorizing the purchase of a system-wide app, getting more information? And I think the 4th option was a Communico consortium group buy, but I'm not sure how viable that is with the Rails option.
I move that we make the motion to not pursue a mobile app at this time. This is Round Lake.
I second that motion. I'm Joe from Des Plaines.
Before you call the vote, we just renewed with Communico too, and we're fairly happy with it. And it has the calendar part that's much more robust, I think, than what the innovative product would have at this time. But I would be interested if they further develop the product to see what it has to offer. I don't want to shut the door on it just because we have a 1-year agreement with Communico. A year from now, maybe we think the innovative product is superior and cheaper. So I don't know what my vote saying would or yes, how it would impact keeping our options open should the product continue to get developed.
I think CCS can certainly monitor development of a product and reintroduce something at any time if there's significant development that could change things, or even pricing changes. If they're like, oh, the app's free for everyone now, well, there you go. So I'm happy to keep governing board up to date regardless of the decision today.
Is it compatible with BB-8? That's what I really need to know, Rebecca.
No.
Keep staring at that over your shoulder and I had to comment.
That's my Lego BB-8. It's pretty cool.
Okay, so we have a motion from Jim and a second from Joe to not pursue the system-wide mobile app purchase at this time. So if we can get a roll call vote, please, Beth.
Start with Round Lake,
Yes.
Lumet,
Yes.
Seneca, Zion,
Yes.
Algonquin,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Crystal Lake,
Yes. Yes.
Elon,
Yes.
Evanston,
Aye.
Fox River Valley,
Yes.
Fremont,
Yes.
Blanco,
Yes.
Glenview, Grays Lake,
I'm just going to vote present. I'm not sure what my director would want at this point.
okay, Highland Park,
Yes.
Huntley,
Yes.
Indian Trails,
Yes.
Lake Forest,
Abstain.
Lake Villa,
Yes.
Lincolnwood,
Yes.
McHenry,
No.
Morton Grove,
Yes.
Niles, Maine,
Yes.
Northbrook,
Yes.
Palatine,
No.
Park Ridge,
Yes.
Prospect Heights.
I say yes to saying no.
Motion passed.
Before we move on, is there interest, and you could do a thumbs up, or you can contact me separately, in a demo of the innovative app for folks who do not currently have an app or are interested in seeing a different option? I've got at least 2 thumbs up, so I'll go ahead and 3 thumbs up, schedule some or get some options from Innovative on lots of thumbs up. All right. We'll get some demos set up so you can take a look at it more closely.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hopefully, if this is a viable option, hopefully it will be something available and cost-effective for libraries who are looking to pursue this option. Next, we have on the agenda CCS website redesign.
A brief update to what's in the packet. We met with our 2 finalists yesterday, and the CCS staff who were able to attend both presentations were unanimous about who we'd like to move forward with. So we have some questions for them, and then we'll start contract negotiations. And our target is to present executive committee with a contract in February so we can get started on the project shortly after. So we're really excited. We had 8 responses that we evaluated. Several were well outside of our budget, but they were interesting to read nonetheless. But we're excited about the options that are in front of us. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Executive committee, I think we'll look forward to hearing more about that in February and signing that contract so we can get the work going. Next on the agenda is COVID-19 service updates, specifically holds.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions over the last week or so, so I just wanted to clarify for anyone. I don't want to get into like how all of the hold settings work, but essentially at this point, we've still we've got resource sharing and holds pickup. So resource sharing is participation in the pick list, essentially, your material going to places. And all of our libraries, except for Crystal Lake, due to their construction, are currently participating in resource sharing. And that may be briefly different due to some library closures that happened this week. But when I wrote the packet, everybody was doing the pick list. Then alternatively, we have holds pickup service. So you allowing folks to come into your library that are not your local patrons to pick up holds. And at this time, libraries are really varied on what they're allowing due to COVID, curbside limitations, all sorts of reasons. So on page 18, we have a list that was as of January 4th, who was allowing non-local patrons to pick up holds. And that's just for your information. And then I just wanted to clarify that even if your library is not allowing folks to pick up holds that are not your local patrons, if you're participating in resource sharing, your material could go to fill those holds for other people. So I had one question that was like, well, when we allow RBP patrons to pick up at our library, are we negatively impacting our neighbors, or are we doing something wrong? Do we need to like do any reciprocal settings? You do not. The hold settings are all managed by each library. So if an item is holdable without limits, as indicated on page 17, it will go out to fill a hold to wherever that hold is eligible to be picked up. So I just wanted to provide some clarification on that since I know things are still really fluid. I'm happy to take additional questions, and we have Deborah on the line as well, and Mieko, who both know more about the hold settings than I do.
And so, Rebecca, are you also recommending that we kind of just double check if it says that we're allowing non-local holds, or it says that we're not, but we actually are? Because there's 2 layers for a lot of us now with our curbside scheduler. And I know that I've had a couple staff that had experienced like putting a hold at another library and it looks for pickup there, and then not being able to schedule for curbside. So like we immediately checked our settings and we're like, oh my God, because there's just so many layers. So do you recommend that we also just verify that everything is as it should be in addition to this being informational?
Yes. Yes, I think that's a really good point. If you're on this list that says no non-local holds pickup, that means your Polaris settings will not allow a patron or staff who's not one of your patron codes to pick up a hold at your library. If you do not have that setting, if your setting right now says yes, but you're only doing curbside and you won't allow someone to use your curbside that's not a local patron, we should indeed update your Polaris settings. So yes, you should confirm your settings.
And this is Diane. I thought that we had updated ours so that Crystal Lake patrons can pick up, because we do have Crystal Lake patrons picking up from our library during their construction.
We can check on that, unless Deborah or Miyako, you know that change was made after this was pulled.
Not that I know of, but we can definitely follow up with your library after governing board to make sure that we get that straightened out.
Okay, Nina would be the contact on that to make sure it's working.
Perfect.
Deborah, I think Lake Forest is also incorrect, because we have reciprocal borrowers at Highland Park and Lake Bluff able to check and pick up placeholds and placeholds and pick up materials at Lake Forest Library. So, I mean, it's happening, so I don't know what the no means. I'm fine with it, but I'm just noting that if no means they are not allowed to do it, it's still working for them.
Okay, I'll definitely check your settings, Catherine. That's unusual. So we'll take a look at those. And is Tori the contact?
I don't think she's in today, so you can just email me, because we're willing at this point to be wide open to everybody.
Perfect. All right, you'll see an email from me in your inbox then.
Thank you kindly.
Okay, any other questions about holds and service? If you do have any, then I recommend that you reach out to Rebecca or Deborah. And yes, please check the list and see that it is accurate for your library. If there is no more discussion about this topic, then we'll move on to the NCOA project introduction.
And for that, we actually have Miyako, who did the research on this and put together the proposal to give us a brief introduction on what we've got.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. So I'm just going to start this overview by briefly reviewing what the NCOA service is. So the National Change of Address, or the NCOA database, contains the change of address records maintained by the USPS. So when a resident moves and submits a change of address request, the information, including their new address, is recorded in the NCOA database. And Unique Management offers an NCOA address cleanup service where they run a list of library patron data through the NCOA database and identify addresses that have been submitted for an update. So we envision the service being an optional project libraries can choose to participate in. There's several opportunities that this service would provide. So first, for the libraries who offer non-expiring cards, this would be a way to identify patrons who may have moved away from your service area. And we currently have 8 CCS libraries who offer non-expiring cards. For libraries who use expiration dates, this service can offer a particularly relevant opportunity at this point in time. So by using the NCOA service, libraries can identify existing patrons who still reside within their service area, and as a result, extend those patrons' expiration dates. So this would allow for a method of contactless card renewal. The patron wouldn't have to physically come to the library to renew their card, or have to virtually submit identification to validate any kind of residency. Additionally, the ability to renew cards ahead of their expiration date would also allow patrons to avoid any lapses in access to library resources. So in terms of cost, Unique charges 1.5 cents per patron record. So costs will vary based on population size and whether your library's goal is to identify patrons to block or patrons to extend. So in the board packet, Rebecca provided cost estimates based on account of all registered patrons with a statistical class of resident or student, regardless of expiration date. Normally, Unique requires a minimum submission value of $750, which translates into 50,000 patrons. But if we have more than one library participating, Unique will waive that minimum requirement. So one challenge of this service is that it does not integrate with the Polaris ILS. So there will be some work involved for both libraries and for CCS. CCS's responsibilities will include coordinating service with Unique, so handling like contracts and paperwork, identifying the patrons for submission, and performing the bulk changes to patron records based on the library's needs, which would include either extending library card expiration dates and address check dates, or adding blocks to library cards, which also includes appending a new address to the patron record. The library's responsibilities would include reviewing the returned data from Unique, signing off on any changes ahead of CCS's bulk updates, working with outlier accounts as needed, and informing patrons of the changes as needed. So kind of looking at the actions in order, once a library submits their intent to participate, CCS will identify the desired patrons, compile them into a file, and submit the file to Unique. And we estimate we would need about 1 week to complete this. Unique will then run a list of patrons against the ENCOA database, and per Unique, this process generally takes about a week. So it's a pretty quick turnover. Once Unique returns a patron list with updated information to CCS, we would post the list of patrons to the library's web reports portal. So the libraries would then be able to access and review the data. Libraries would have 60 days to review the return data and submit approvals for record updates to CCS. And then CCS will update the patron data as approved by libraries. And again, depending on the library, this may either mean blocking the patrons or extending expiration dates. CCS estimates that we would be able to manage about 1 library's data per day. So that's kind of how the project would work in a nutshell. We anticipate being ready for the first submission during the second quarter of 2021. So ahead of that, we will definitely send more detailed information to the circulation listserv and the library admin listservs. We would like to host a virtual Q&A session. And with the timing of the project, we also anticipate being able to discuss and take any questions at the April circulation technical group meeting. And then of course, staff can submit any questions they have to the help desk.
Thanks, Miko. So I wanted to get this project in front of governing board ahead of those April dates, and with the governing board schedule, I didn't want to wait until April to have people scrambling to determine if they wanted to participate. So if you have additional questions, we're happy to take them now, or if you want to submit those to the help desk or wait for that additional information to go out to LibAdmin and Circ, those are all options.
Is there a reason that we wouldn't want to do this consortium wide?
I think the cost and the workload, I think that the process that Miko has outlined will eliminate a lot of my other concerns, which are around data integrity. Swan did an ENCOA project on the whole database, and it resulted in a lot of data issues. The library review of addresses is really important because it will pick up like second properties of people, or like, you know, like their Florida house or whatever. So if a library isn't committed to doing that work, we don't want to send their records and pay for them.
How does this differ from what we've been doing? Because I know we've been submitting stuff at least annually the last couple of years.
I am not sure what you've been submitting. Miyako, do you have any info on that?
Well, I think the group submission, CCS would be able to, I think, automate more than what libraries have been doing individually. I know when a library, and in the past when a library has run this project individually, they've traditionally submitted, a set of patron records to CCS, like bulk add a block to them. This time, CCS would also not only be able to bulk add a block or bulk extend the patron date. Bob has also developed a process that would append the revised or the new address to the patron record to make it easier for staff to review patrons who have moved. And I suppose also it would be the group purchasing power. I'm not sure for libraries who have submitted it individually, if they've been able to meet the minimum rate that Unique requires. But since we are anticipate on submitting more than one library, we're not tied to that minimum.
Miyako, I'll interject here. I've been involved the last little over a year submitting, and generally what we have done is put out a request to the CircleListserv and say, is anybody else interested, in order to secure that rock bottom pricing. And Unique has been good about letting us do, several libraries band together in order, and this year especially, they've been very good about allowing that the window of opportunity to be quite extended. But this is securing the lowest price available.
This is Catherine from Lake Forest. So I got a little lost in the description of the process. So it still seems fairly labor intensive for staff, because what you're doing is generating a spreadsheet of our current 13,000 with the address we show, and then with the potential for a change in address, or what is the document that is going to be given to staff to review look like? Is it just the changes, or is it all 13,000?
Catherine, I just did this. Literally last month. And so we get what we had been doing, this is before CCS comes into the process, but we had exported, gotten our list of patrons, we sent it off, we got the whole list back. However, there's a new column in the spreadsheet that is an indicator of new address or not new address. And so we were able to resort the spreadsheet to have all of the new address grouping at the top. We sent, I forget, it was over 10,000 addresses, and had like 300 that had a change of address. Right now, I got a circ clerk in her spare time putting the blocks in by hand. Mm-hmm. Being able to have somebody kind of review it, and then have CCS put in the blocks as an automated process will be a huge time saver, rather than doing it by hand. But so it's yes, it requires some review, but having CCS do it versus doing it yourself, I think, is going to be a huge time saver.
So can I guess I as a library that doesn't charge fines, so I am not mailing anything to anybody. As a library who's probably got 50% of their card holders with multiple homes. I'm just like, what motivates you to do this, Molly? Like, are you looking for people because they've absconded with stuff, or what?
Two things. One is our population is very transient. And so we have people moving in and out of town all the time. I mean, we have people who register for a card, check items out, and by the time we are billing them, they are no longer at their address. So yes, we are. I mean, I actually sent 2 lists to Unique. I sent one of current card holders, and I sent another list with card holders who were no longer in our district but had fees of over $20. I have some people on my list with fees up to $5,000 who I'm still trying to find. And so I had that list came back with over 200 new addresses on it, and Unique, I can now submit those 200 folks back to Unique, and they will go and try and contact those people again for me. So, I mean, for you guys and like Forrest, maybe this isn't something you want to do. For us in Zion, I do believe it is something that we are going to do at least annually, and to have CCS's support in helping to do those bulk changes is going to be a real time saver for me.
And I'd also circle back just to what Mieko said for libraries that want to offer an automatic card renewal service. It gives you the opportunity to say, while I don't normally mail people stuff, maybe I do want to send a mailing to these 200 patrons before we automatically renew their card to make sure that that mail doesn't bounce back, to do that sort of automated address check. And then assuming, you know, they all still have their property in Lake Forest, you could just renew their cards without them having to come in and show proof of address. And for those libraries that don't have card expirations, it's a tool for them to see, you know, do they have patrons on the books that shouldn't be on the books? So I don't think it's a project that everyone would need to undertake. As Kate said, we could do it as a whole system, but I think our efforts would be better focused on those libraries that have a vested interest, either as Molly noted, for collections purposes or for these other service opportunities that Mieko brought up. I'm sorry, Jeannie, I kind of cut you off.
Well, and I think you kind of answered my question. As the library with the most patrons, I'm concerned based on Molly's numbers that I'm going to have over 1,000 to review. And I don't know my 55,000 patrons well enough to know if they've bought a second property in Florida. So I'm not going to have any input on that anyway. So if there's no requirement to participate or no deadline to turn things around, I'm all for let's do this as a group for the best pricing, but I don't know that we have the bandwidth, especially right now, to participate when I'm about 17 days behind on check-in of materials at this point. So those of you who have patrons who've returned things to my library, my apologies. They're piled everywhere. We will get to them someday.
Yeah, and Mieko put together a much more robust description that I included in the packet, just for the sake of brevity. So for some of these different service models, I included the pricing to send all of your patrons, essentially. But for some of these other models, you'd only send your expiring patrons to see if you want to renew them. So that would really cut down on your workload, depending on what approach you wanted to take. So again, we'll send the whole document out so people can read it at their leisure. It was very interesting. Thank you, Mieko, for your work on that. Yeah, I'm not looking for a motion from the board today. I don't recommend doing this as a group, although if someone wants to make a motion and override me, that's perfectly acceptable, and say we want to do it system-wide. But I think if at least 2 libraries are interested, which I think Mieko already has some libraries lined up that are, the pricing is available. So we don't need 100% participation to get the deal.
Can I just mention that CCS offered this 7 years ago. I'm looking at an email from 2014. We participated. We purged out a lot of dead wood, got rid of a lot of accounts that were, idle for many years. It was all precipitating when we were doing a big purge of long overdue accounts as a consortia. So to clean out the database before we did that, we did this. My circ manager, I'm looking at her notes from it. It was great. It wasn't that much work. And the way that it's being offered now, CCS, we'd be doing a lot more of the work that we previously had to do ourselves. So if you have circ managers that were around 7 years ago, you might want to talk to them and see if they thought it was a good deal at the time. And if they would want to do it again, count me in as someone wants to do it again. And interestingly, the cost is the same as it was 7 years ago at the 1.5 cents a record. So Unique has a pretty well-oiled machine as far as this goes. So it's really not going to be that much work. And if you get to clean out your database a little bit, it makes all of your statistics mean a little bit more. They're a little more true. Thank you.
This is Mick.
Diane. Oh, sorry. I agree with Scott. We just did it along with Molly and a couple others. And we've been getting that low price all along. We do it about once a year. And when you're doing it on an annual basis, it really cleans up the database nicely. And also you don't have as much work because it is on an annual basis. Once you do that first big batch, it's a lot more, it goes a lot more smoothly the years after.
To underscore what Mieko said and Rebecca said, I think I turned CCS onto this like 1.5 years ago. When I was at Skokie, one of the things that we really want to do is have non-expiring library cards. And I know 8 of us have that from what I understand. And that's the whole point of this, because it's annoying to come in, especially in a virtual world and then COVID as well, to have to renew a card. And you only need to renew a card is when you're in the airport about to get on a plane and you want to download some books. And then you're a month overdue and you can't call and do it. So if this auto renews, then you don't have to worry about that. So it's a much better patron experience. Let us do the work, not put that work on the patrons. And that's how I see it. Now, what Catherine says about the 2 houses, that's a problem I'm looking forward to having eventually when I win the lottery, but it's not a problem for me. But I understand why it wouldn't work for some people. But the point is to create a better customer service experience. And I think this does a great job of that as well as we can in this situation. When I was pushing CCS to do this, because I knew they had the coding power behind it to be able to do the bulk stuff, because I made Molly do this, 1 year ago, and Kelly and stuff. And they, it was a lot of work the first time, but they got it done and it made a huge difference and it made the customer service experience difference. And then you can pitch to your board, hey, let's have library cards that last forever because we have this other mechanism that moves these people off our records. And so no one is taking advantage of us. And nobody moves in for 3 months, gets a card for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever you do, and then takes advantage of you in another way, if that's how you want to look at it. So that's how I saw it, just speaking, going back to the why of the question.
We just used it just like a couple months ago because we just passed a policy that we eliminated expiration dates on our library cards. And this is what we'll be using going forward as well. And it hasn't been, I mean, we've got work to do, but the CERC staff is just going through them, as they have time. So, and like I said, we'll be using it probably annually from now on.
So can I just ask kind of a timeline clarifying question to make sure I got all the dates right in my head? So you're going to send out like the Mieko super document, right? I can't wait to read. And then the April CERC users group meeting, you're going to be introducing this to them, and it would be after that we could kind of opt in, or are we formally voting on this at the April? No, or we're just going to do it. And if we're interested, I guess what I'm wondering is if we're like interested, do we just put a help desk ticket in? Do we just email Mieko? Do we have to wait until something is more formal?
We don't quite have like the specific details of it yet. If you are interested, I'm very happy to hear about it. Those will definitely be some details that we kind of echo out over the next couple of weeks.
So right now, just email you and say, we're interested, but don't know that we're not doing anything yet, and there'll be more information forthcoming.
Yes.
Yes, the project timeline was to start in the spring. And
Right.
this was just to get it on your radar so it wasn't a surprise. I don't have any intention of voting on this in April, again, unless there's a majority that say, let's just do this system-wide. I think that doing it as an opt-in service, because it has to, based on the library's need, there's different ways to submit, makes the most sense.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Mieko, for sharing that project. I think there's a lot of potential, and it sounds like this will be a good way for libraries who are already using this service to be able to do it without bearing quite as much of the work at their own libraries. And for those of us who have not been using it, it seems a good opportunity for us to clean up our databases. So we'll look forward to more information, and then later on in spring, we'll determine how we are going to move forward individually or as a group. If there's not anything else, then we will move on to reports. I do not have anything to report. Who do we have? Diane?
Yeah, no report.
Mick?
The finance committee met, I forget the date, Beth can tell, you've got the minutes in there. And we will be meeting a couple of times more in the near future.
Okay.
December 11th, and the next meeting is the end of January.
Rebecca?
Are there any questions on my written report? I did want to clarify the email I sent out last night regarding the non-resident populations. I got a couple of questions right away, which was just very exciting that people are reading my emails at night. I want to preface it by saying that I am in no way telling you who to offer service to or who not to offer service to. I was curious about what these numbers would potentially look like. And wondered if there was a way to figure it out. So I roped my poor boyfriend into doing this project with me. He was a real good sport. There are a lot of limitations to how we developed the estimates. A big one is that we did not look at school districts. So part of the where do you get your card situation can depend on if you are in a school district where there's a library in the school district. I'm not an attorney. I do not interpret the code. All we did was look at, I'm gonna shift for just a second. We just looked at the physical distance from a library to a residence, essentially. So I had a question that was like, well, how did you decide where to put things? We didn't decide anything. In this screenshot, you can see it's kind of a close-up of the yellow is the Niles Main District Library Service Area. The red are other library service areas, and the purple is non-resident service areas. So you see these sort of like dark lines making these different shaped polygons all over the map. Those have like a name. They're Voronoi, it's a Voronoi diagram, or they're like Theisian polygons. I don't know. But essentially what those are is an algorithm that says, give me a set of points and a plane, and then I'm going to divide that plane into shapes. So everything in the plane is as close as possible to one of the points. So in this case, the points were the main library of each of the main libraries. It does not look at the shape of the service area or like the distance the service area spans. It doesn't look at school districts. It doesn't look at zip codes. It's just saying geographically, what is the area that is closest to this library compared to the other libraries? So we drew those shapes using this algorithm, no additional like input in there. It's just where these libraries live. And then using census data said, okay, this purple area, this unserved area is at least 50% in, or a census block within this purple area is at least 50% in this library's shape. What's the population of that purple area? And that's how we got those estimates. So for those of you who have different numbers based on your actual lived experience as library directors and different practices and policies, this is not an attempt to tell you to not do that or that your numbers are wrong. This was to satisfy my curiosity about where unserved populations are in Illinois and how libraries could potentially be impacted. There's a lot of opportunities for further sort of research and calculation in this. I am not saying that I or we are going to do that. I know that it is on Rails's radar to provide some more mapping tools, but they have a lot of projects and there's no timeline that I'm aware of when that would happen. So I'm happy to take any additional questions on this. I didn't want to like frighten or confuse anyone, and it seems like I might have done that. Really, I was just curious and then thought that the product of my curiosity may be of interest to others as well.
And so Rebecca, just to clarify, when we're talking unserved population, you're looking at the total population of who's in the house. And this isn't number of households, right? So like, because of course for us, when someone buys a non-resident card, it's good for the entire household. So that would also alter things as well. And I'm wondering, does Matt have that data? Like, did that come, like, I don't know all the, different stuff that you got from Grant and other places, but would we be able to also look at the number of households? I know you weren't looking at this from a perspective of money, but I do think that that is something else too that boards look at. I find the whole thing fascinating.
I don't know. I think certainly looking at households would give us another way to count. And if the data is in census, if it exists somewhere in census blocks, we can use it essentially. We did try briefly to incorporate free and reduced lunch data because that would be kind of like a corollary for the Card for Kids program and those poverty levels. But so that was federal data, and then we were using state data for the original map. So the IDs of the census blocks didn't line up. So like eventually with more resources, we could make them line up, but like me and Matt working after hours to like, see what we could do with this map. Like we're like, no, not gonna do that. So I think it's the same with school districts. Like school district data must exist in this map form somewhere in the state that should be accessible to someone who can do map stuff with it. I'll ask about household data because if it's just a simple question of pull from column Q instead of column P, that wouldn't be too hard to rerun. But I don't know that that is in the data files.
Just so you know, too, some
Diane.
of this is dependent on the data that the counties give also, because Rebecca found out that my numbers were really low at Cary compared to what I have. And it's because some information from an annexation in 2007 does not show up on the map provided at the by the state library. So there's all kinds of variations here as well.
Yeah, and we were able to adjust the Cary service area based on Diane's information. We like manually redrew it. And by we, I mean Matt, I did nothing except email Diane. So yes, like if Cary's was wrong, I'm sure there are others that are incorrect as well. And that came out just doing a quality check for like, are we pulling population data right? We pulled the population data from the map and compared it to IPLAR population. And again, because we're looking at census blocks, which may not line up with library service areas, it wasn't exact for any library, but for most libraries, it was plus or minus 8%, but Cary was like 15 or 20 or something. I don't remember the exact numbers. So we knew there was an issue. When we adjusted the service area, it resolved it for Cary.
Well, and there's also like Northbrook and Glenview have, you know, an informal agreement because we both serve the same school districts, that we have a cutoff at Willow Road, because we have some that kind of fall, so that makes it easier, and that wouldn't be reflected here either. But at least it gives us a ballpark, because like, you know.
Yeah, and I know Carrie and Crystal Lake have a similar sort of like dividing line. So, you know, Crystal Lake has a ton potentially of these unserved patrons. If I were Crystal Lake, I would not say, give me those e-resource cards for non-residents at no cost. But for libraries where, you know, maybe 1%, your service population would increase by like 1%, that maybe wouldn't be a huge impact on your spending and would be good publicity. But again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I was just curious and wondered what data was out there and then thought I'd share it. I can provide screenshots if you're interested in a screenshot of your particular service area, like this example from Niles. I can pull those. I just can't share the whole map because it's in GIS software, and once we make it a PDF, it's not usable really anymore. So I'm happy to do this if you want to shoot me an email, or I can just plan to do everybody's as I have time.
Thanks for doing that, Rebecca. It's very interesting. And thank your boyfriend.
Yeah, poor Matt, long-suffering Matt.
Maybe you should give him some crumpets.
I'll invite him to the next CCS tea and crumpets. That's a great idea, Karen. Oh, Glenview joined the call. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi. Let me get my, I'm here. Sorry, I had it on my calendar for 11. I was almost too embarrassed to join, but I figured I'd get the tail end of the call. Sorry, everybody.
We'll add you to the attendance. I just didn't want to leave you out. Are there any questions on my report? Anything else that I missed? And then I just wanted to share one more.
Wait, could you stop screen sharing so we could see people?
Oh, sure. You can see Lindsay because she joined the call. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to share with everyone that at February's executive committee, we'll be reviewing the succession plan for CCS because I am planning to take some leave later in the year as I am expecting a baby in July. Yeah, thank you. So Sarah and I have already had some preliminary conversations, and I've started talking with CCS managers. We'll be talking with the rest of the staff this week. Hey, Mieko. We've got plenty of time to get our ducks in a row and make sure things are arranged, but I wanted to let all of you know before word just started bubbling up, so you weren't surprised by anything. So that's all I have for my report.
And I will just add that even though at the beginning of this year, I said, this was supposed to be an easy year, and then all this stuff happened, it's all worth it to be privy to the baby news. So congratulations.
Sarah already knew. She's been in the know. Thank you, Sarah, for being in the know.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. Do we have any reports from committees and groups aside from what is in our packet? Any questions or anything that needs to be discussed?
I have no updates besides what's in the packet unless there are questions.
Okay, if there are no questions, then can we adjourn by declaration? Can I do that at 11:40?
One other thing, Sarah. Just briefly, maybe I should have said this earlier during the comments, and a few people at the beginning heard this. I am leaving Zion Benton at the end of the month due to an elder care issue out of state. The board is currently in the middle of interviewing. I expect that they will make a offer to a candidate for director before the end of the month. So there may be a brief gap, but I don't expect that it will be too long. I have designated a proxy per Rebecca's request in case something does come up that needs a vote. Otherwise, I've really enjoyed it. I'll miss you guys.
Well, Molly, we've seen you pop up at CCS meetings many a time over the last several years. So we will miss seeing you and we wish you all the very best with your, I don't know if it's an adventure, but with your new journey. So do take care. All right, if there are no other announcements, then I will adjourn by declaration at 11:45 a.m. or